Hi friends, Mindy here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be starting on another start to finish series using a scrapbooking paper pack. So this is the coffee shop collection from Carta, and I've had this collection in my stash for a couple of months now, and I was making myself finish up some of my other projects before I got started on these journals that I want to create. So now that those are mostly finished, I am going to start on this beautiful collection. So I'm going to be making a couple different sized journals. This first one is actually going to be a soft cover. It's going to be 9 by 6, and I started off with some Amazon packaging and some fabric that's in my stash, and you can kind of see some of the glue still a little bit wet through the fabric, but that will we'll cover that. It'll be fine. But for the inside, I want to add one of the papers from the collection for a couple of reasons. This cardstock is very thick, and so it's going to add a little bit of stability to the cover, but I still like that little crinkly kind of feel of the Amazon packaging covers. And so it's also going to tie in all of the colors that are in the palette. So I just chose this beautiful paper here. I'm going to size this so that it basically fits kind of within the stitching that I have on the around the edge. I just kind of did a zigzag stitch all the way around the cover, and then I'm going to trim this down. So like I said, this journal is going to be 9 by 6, and I also have the 6 by 6 paper pad for this. So I'm going to be creating a smaller journal as well. But for right now, for on camera, for the start to finish, I'm just going to show you this one. And so I'm starting off with some double-sided adhesive and that one paper that I selected. I'm going to cover the entire back of this with this double-sided adhesive to make sure that it's good and secure on the inside cover, and just trimming off the excess. And then I'm going to peel back some of the release paper, but not the entire thing. That way I can actually sort of get it started and without feeling like it just gives me a little bit of wiggle room. I have many times in the past like accidentally dropped it or whatever, and it's very sticky adhesive, and so particularly when you're dealing with like packaging situation, I just want to make sure that I can kind of give myself a little bit of wiggle room. So you can see here I'm just using a craft pick, and I'm going to kind of just start the process here, and then I'll line it up on the one edge before I actually press it down, and then I will pull the rest of the release paper. So I do this a lot when I'm covering journals, just to make sure that I don't, get it crooked or whatever, because sometimes, like I said, you don't really always get a second chance with this because it's so sticky. And there was one part where I missed the adhesive somehow, so I'm just adding a little bit of liquid glue just right in that one little section. I don't know how I did that either, but things happen, so it's okay. So now you can see here, I'm just going to kind of line this up. I'm lining it, like I said, within the stitching that's on the cover. I'm going to leave those little strings hanging down. If you don't like those, you could certainly trim them off. I like them hanging there. But that's just personal preference. Now I'm going to pull down the rest of the release paper, and then I can just kind of let this fall into place, and then I will burnish this down really, really well with my bone folder, just to make sure that it is completely adhered all the way around, especially around the edges. I went over this multiple times, and now I'm going to gently fold my cover. I'm actually using my bone folder to help me with that. I want to line up these edges the best that I can. It's kind of the good thing about a soft covered journal like this is you do have some wiggle room within the cover, because it's going to expand considerably as we add the pages and the pockets and all of those things. So now this is kind of how my cover is looking, and I want to start selecting the papers. So like I mentioned, I do have the 12 by 12 and the 6 by 6 papers. I'm starting off with the 12 by 12, but there are some of these pages that I actually want to be in both journals. And so I also really like having a variety of sizes of pages in my journals. I don't like them all to just be the same size. And normally I would add like vintage papers and different things within my journal as well. But this time I'm not going to do that, mostly because this cardstock this pattern paper is so thick that I just don't really have the space to be able to do that. So what I'm going to do is take a couple of these larger ones that I want to really be in both journals, and I'm going to trim them down, and those will be my shorter pages, but they'll work in both journals. So because these are 12 by 12, I'm going to cut them in half, and my journal, my inner pages are basically 8.5 inches tall. And so it's not, you know, too incredibly short, and it will just work as a fun, just kind of different element. Like I said, I really just enjoy having different sizes of papers in there, and you'll see another couple of ideas for that as well as we go through here. But so I'm just kind of going through and trying to decide which ones I want to be in both journals. Some of these ones that are just a little bit busier are also ones that I'm cutting in half because it's just less visual kind of chaos that's happening. I really like the patterns, but a full page of it can be a lot. And this is one of my favorite pages, and so I definitely wanted to make sure that this was in the journal. But I cut this one down to 8 inches, and then the 4 inches that's left over will go into the other journal. And so some of them I cut down to 8.5 inches tall, and some of them are 8 inches, and then a couple of them are 6 inches, just kind of depended on the pages. And then there are some that I'm going to just save for the other journal. Something like the pieces that I cut off, I will use those to create some of the pockets that go in this journal. I will create some of the journaling cards with those as well. So none of those pieces that I'm cutting off are going to waste. They're definitely going to go into this journal. They're just not going to be the main base pages. And then one of the other items that I purchased was the coordinating cardstock. And this has 2 each of the different colors. So I'm going ahead and just right off the bat, I'm pulling one of each of the colors for the other journal, but I'm still going to cut this one down, but I'm leaving these the same height. And these are really kind of hard because one of them is like a navy blue and one of them is a black, but the colors are very, very close. They're both kind of heavy. And so after I have trimmed all of my pages down to the proper height, now I'm going to trim them to 11 inches wide so that when they fold in half, they will fit nicely inside this journal. And I'm going to go through and fold every one of these pages. I'm using my bone folder to make sure to burnish those, and just kind of varying the outside patterns and different things. And then I really decided I wanted this kind of pink pattern that's just a little bit more calm to be the first page of the journal, because I will put kind of a focal image on that. And then I figured, you know, what is a coffee themed journal without some coffee dyed paper? So I'm going to add in some coffee dyed paper along the way as well. And so here you can see I have that shorter page, and I'm going to alternate this between like the pattern papers, the smaller pages, the larger pages, the just plain colored cardstock, and all of these are obviously going to end up with pockets and tuck spots and probably some flip out things, interactive elements, because that's just how I really love to do them. And so it's going to end up being quite a chunky journal, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Again, you can see me going through here and just trying to get everything in the order that I like it. There's no rhyme or reason. This is really just kind of how it looks best to your eye. And then I also had some half sheets of coffee dyed paper that have design on them. And so I'm going to add some of these in here too, just for some extra interest. Really love coffee dyed paper, and especially the ones that have designs on them. So just kind of going through here, trying to decide where I want everything. I'll move it around a couple different times, trying to strike a good balance between pattern and color and size, if that makes sense. And so I really love how this particular page looks up against that like pale blue. So I'm going to make sure to keep those next to each other. I just really like how those look. And that's going to be sort of how my signature looks. So now I'm going to put everything together. And I had to fiddle with this quite a bit because, again, this cardstock is thick cardstock. And so I'm putting some clips on here to kind of hold everything. And I really had to fiddle with this for several minutes. Every time I would kind of get my clips where I thought I could go ahead and start punching my holes, something just wasn't lining up right. There was a big gap or whatever, and it just is that way sometimes. So I pulled out my book cradle that I'm going to use to do the punching, and that helped me to be able to kind of get everything lined up, but I did fiddle with this quite a bit. You can see even before I get it into the book cradle, I'm having to move everything around and kind of tuck everything into like the gutter part as tight into the spine as I can possibly get. That's just going to help me so that when I punch these holes, I get a really good like right on the crease of all of the pages. So I'm starting with a hole in the center, and then from about an inch from the top and the bottom. I did not measure. You could certainly do that if that was something that was important to you. I think I eyeball it, and I think it works just fine. So I am going to use some white waxed linen thread, and I'm going to trim this to about 3 times the height of the spine. And I actually did a little bit more than that because I left some length on here, and it's just easier to work with when you have at least for me, when I have extra, I can always trim off later. So that's just personal preference. I'm going to pull out a bookbinding needle here, and I'm going to do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. And I've been asked to do this a little bit slower so you can kind of see. So I'm starting from the inside of the middle hole and moving to the outside of the signature. And then I am going to go up to the top hole, and I'm going to come back into the center of the signature. You could go to the bottom, either way, it doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to go all the way down to the other hole down at the bottom, and then from back into the signature into that center hole. And just be very careful here. You don't want your needle to go through the other thread that's already there. So this one kind of takes a little bit of finessing. And then I want to make sure that both of those tails are on either side of that long piece. And I'm going to go ahead and pull off those clips so that I can make sure everything is tight down. You can kind of see I don't have it tight enough right there. So I'm pulling, and you always want to pull in the direction that you sew. If you pull the opposite direction, you can like make a bigger hole, if that makes sense. And so I'm just tightening this down. I'm going to actually tie this a couple, and I end up doing it like 3 times, I think, just to make sure. And then I will leave these nice and long. I have some ideas of some little things that I want to hang off the end of this, I think, if I have the time to do that. And so anyway, I am going to kind of leave this. I'm going to leave the strings hanging. I can always adjust the cover down to the road. I will add a topper as well to this journal. But I just wanted to do a quick flip through so you can kind of see where we're at for the end of this start to finish series. This is just the cover. There will be a part 2 where I start doing some pockets and ephemera and different things. So let me know if you are interested in seeing that as well. And if you liked this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Also, I will put the link for my website and my Facebook group. I'd really love to have you join me over there as well. Oh, and just really quickly here, I'm just showing I have some other coffee themed paper that will probably be making an appearance in this journal as well. But also, if you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. All the links will be in the description. And until next time, bye.